I'm back. Had to get some water. I'm sure I've cleared my throat about 600 times so far in this video, or in the previous one. So when I got out of prison, now I will say right before I got out, I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified that I was going to go back to drugs. Just terrified, really. I feel like a tiny part of me wanted to because it was familiar and comfortable, and a coping mechanism. But yeah, I was just pretty terrified. But I was very open about that and told people, and had ended up with some really, really amazing friends who loved the Lord, and I was encouraged by them and encouraged by the chaplain, and I joined the choir in the prison and did some songwriting there, and that was really my first experience with sharing any of my songs with people. And it was only a few times because it was terrifying. So still have that stage fright to this day, although not as bad. I remember once, this is just an extra, this is a free story for you, not really a part of the testimony, but I had written a song and was asked to share it with the church service. And I had to have everyone turn around and look the other way. Or I had to stand in the back of the room and face the backs of everybody's heads because I just could not handle everybody looking at me while I was singing. It was terrifying, and it still feels that way. So, not even sure why I shared that. Details. I'm a details person. So anyway, I ended up getting out and going to a Christian transition home for women who were coming out of prison. And this was a very difficult, but also very fruitful, I think, time in my life to be surrounded by so many people who were holding me accountable. Although I do remember a number of days just going into one of the staff members' offices and saying, I don't want to be here anymore. I want to go back to drugs. I just want to go get wasted and just be done with all of this. And the response was, if you want to go, go. We're not keeping you here. Go ahead. And I knew that even though I was in kind of fight or flight mode, I was a very new Christian, surrounded by temptation. I had a job at a hotel. I mean, that in itself, it was awesome that the Lord provided that job for me, but there was just tons of temptation there. And I just wanted to leave and have it all over with and not have to care. I remember saying, I want God to stop caring about me so that I can stop caring about him. So even then, I knew that it wasn't me holding on. It was him grasped onto me. And I was like, let go, please. Just let go so I can go back and do my thing. And being chosen by the Lord just means that his grasp is always there, even when we are trying to pry his fingers off of us. And I'm so grateful for that, because left to my own devices, I would have been long gone and dead, and would have left that program, and you would have never heard from me again. So managed to get through that really difficult part of that, and still, had temptation, and still wrestled with different things. And a lot during that time, looking back, I really tried to I really believed that if I didn't have it all together, that I was not really a true Christian. And I constantly battled the fear of losing my salvation. As if I had done anything to earn it to begin with. I was just terrified that any day the Lord was going to take it from me. And part of me wanted that so that I wouldn't have to do the Christian thing anymore. But the other part of me was terrified. Just that fear of being rejected. The ultimate rejection would be the rejection of God. And I was just terrified that was going to be happening to me. Did not have a lot of peace, therefore, as a Christian early on. Was very shaky in my faith, and tried to say things the right way and pray things the right way and do what the other Christians were doing, because if I didn't look like them, then I probably wasn't really a Christian. And that was detrimental at that time for my walk with the Lord because I did not understand grace. It was just works. It was just solely works. Make sure that you're doing what everybody else is doing so you can check it off the list and pray like they do and do the gifts of the Spirit like they do and do all of the things that they're doing. So I feel like I did a lot of people pleasing even during that time. Like that I wasn't instantly saved of that, unfortunately, and still have that issue 10 years later. What do you know? But at the same time, it was a good experience, a good place for me to be because I was held accountable for a lot of things and I couldn't do anything without somebody knowing about it, which was kind of frustrating at the time, but it was good. And so grew a lot during that time. And was stretched a lot and started to see how my testimony, even though I'd only been a believer for a short period of time, started to see how sharing it was a very freeing thing for me and for my heart, and then for other people who were struggling as well. So I loved that early on, which is probably why I'm doing this video, because I really hope to be an encouragement to someone who is struggling through those same things, or who knows someone who is, or whose family has been devastated by addiction and by the craziness of that lifestyle, or by mental illness. And so what was the point of that? I don't know what the point of that was, but I hope that someone is encouraged. I'll just leave it at that. So I had been at the women's home for about 16 months, and I, at some point there, was watching videos on YouTube, worship videos, and came across some videos by a Bible college in Dallas and felt like I'm going to be there one day. I want to be there. I want to glorify the Lord in that way by going to Bible college. And I had started some classes at a community college there and got, I think, 15 credits or so, which is still what I have to my name this day. So ended up derailing and going many different directions other than regular college, I guess. So ended up leaving the women's home in Florida and flying to Dallas to go to Bible school. Didn't know anybody, just kind of started all over and packed up a bunch of my stuff and just moved over there and went to Bible school there. That is where I met Zach. I started school in August, and in November or so, I would say, I met Zach, my husband, and we started dating. And a year later, just about a year after we met, we got married, which is fast and brought a lot of problems of its own. And I had a lot of baggage, as you've heard from the previous video and all of this sharing. I had a lot of baggage that I came into marriage with. So we started off pretty crazy, and then about, a month after we got married, we found out that I was pregnant. So definitely, if not honeymoon baby, I would say maybe a week after at the latest. And so here we are, these young, newly married people expecting a baby. And oh my goodness, it was just everything in me that was ever a control freak just came bubbling up to the surface. And it was bad. It was pretty bad. And so we had our first daughter, and when she was about 15 months old, and we still had all kinds of marital issues, but when she was, I guess, about 15 months old, we went, and I had left the Bible school, and Zach continued, and before he could graduate, we had to do a semester overseas, and so we went to the Philippines. And while we were there, and anyone who is watching this who is in the Philippines with us, or who is a part of our sending organization, will laugh at this and know the magnitude of what I'm about to say. But we had issues, and they came out under the pressure of the missions field. My goodness, did they ever. But in the middle of all of that, we were able to get some healing and kind of move forward in some things that we had been stuck in. And we felt like the Lord was calling us to Thailand. So we came back from the Philippines. It was a 3-month or a 12-week, I think. Yeah, that's 3 months. Yeah, 3-month internship is what it was. It was like a pressure cooker, we have called it, and they called it too, because all of the stuff that's in you, oh man, the cross-cultural living and training and all of that was just intense. It was intense. And we were young and married and had this kid. And oh man, it was crazy. So we came back from the Philippines and planned to moved to Thailand, did our support raising, did all of that stuff. And somewhere in all of that, in the preparing to go, actually, I think it was before the Philippines, I was in a program called Steps at our church, and I had to like process through a lot of these things that had happened to me before and all of the things that I had done to other people. And I feel like it was kind of beginning to rip the Band-Aid off of a lot of stuff very, very slowly. It was not a quick rip at all. And so I had to process through a lot of those things, and still am processing through some of that stuff today. But that honestly, while it ended up being a really good thing, it just like complicated my life constantly, because when I was at the women's home, I think what I really needed was counseling, and I did not get counseling in the way that I needed it. And I didn't even know that, but I needed to like sit down week after week and talk with a therapist about trauma, basically, is what I needed. And didn't get that. That's not what the program was there for. They were very encouraging in the Lord and encouraged us to grow in our love for the Word and our love for God and our love for people. But I really think that I needed some pretty intense counseling and didn't get it at that time. So then we get to Thailand. Well, we had a baby, another baby, had baby number 2. And I had severe postpartum depression, and we were in the process of support raising to move overseas. And my mind just kind of felt like it was crumbling. And we ended up moving overseas anyway. And by that time I had recovered a little bit from the postpartum depression. But it was still it was a pretty scary time, because I was feeling things that I hadn't felt since long before I ever became a believer. And so God sustained me through it, but it is definitely a part of my story that I look back on and think, that was crazy. It was really crazy as a Christian to feel that sort of crippling depression. And I think it gave me compassion for people in a way, for believers in a way that not that I didn't want to have compassion, but I just was not able to be empathetic. And now I am. And so mental illness and chemical imbalances and all of that stuff does not see Christian, non-Christian, white, black, anything. It just doesn't see anything, because we live in this fallen and broken world. And so the effects of sin are just everywhere. And not sure why I'm saying all of that. I'm just rambling. I like to ramble, as you've probably been able to tell so far. So we had a baby. We moved to Thailand, and I was working through some things there as well, and having to face a bunch of situations from the past and realize the sort of abuse that I really had endured on a number of levels. And then she was the middle child at the time. We've had another baby since, but she was the youngest at the time when she was 2. The weekend of her 2nd birthday, we went to stay at this beautiful resort that was the equivalent of $30 US a night. And oh man, it was our favorite place to go, and just get away for a couple of days. It was right in the middle of the city, but it was designed so beautifully that you thought you were just out on this island somewhere. It was so wonderful. And we hope to be able to go back and visit that place soon in the not too distant future. But we went there, and our sweet little one spiked this really high fever and couldn't move her neck and couldn't walk. And it was terrifying. It was pretty terrifying. So over the next couple of months, that was in March, over the next couple of months, we took her to some specialists, and they said, it looks like it's juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, but you need to rule out cancer, because she had these kind of weird presentations and really, really fast disease progression for her age. And so they just wanted to make sure. So we ended up coming back to the States. We were already planning to come back anyway in August, and it ended up getting moved up to May something we left. We got back to the States on June 1st. And we, after just being back for a few days, went to an oncologist, and she had a scan, and we were able to rule out cancer, which we were so grateful for. But then we started learning about the beast that was and is juvenile arthritis. And flares were really bad for her. We tried a number of medications, and they just weren't working and helping the way that we needed them to. If she would have a flare, she couldn't walk and needed to be carried, and was waking up multiple times a night in pain. Just super huge joints. All of the joints that you could see were inflamed. And she has erosion in her spine, which was a part of that really fast disease progression that was not expected for somebody her age. And so, yeah, it was her neck, shoulders, elbows, wrists, fingers, hips, knees, ankles, toes. Poor baby, just head to toe. And we have seen a lot of improvement in the last, 6 months or so, since we took her off of medication and just decided to try only our natural things. I lean toward crunchy, more natural things. And we were doing those and the conventional medicine, but we decided just to keep her off the conventional meds. And she's been doing really well. But I would say that, and this is just kind of a cool silver lining part, but in the process of having to advocate for our daughter and figure out what was going on, and in the middle of suffering like that with having a sick child and not knowing at first what it was, if it was cancer, if it was something else, or if it was going to debilitate her forever, if she was going to end up in a wheelchair. I mean, there were just a lot of unknowns, and there still are, honestly, a lot of unknowns, even though she's doing a lot better. I feel like the Lord used that for Zach and I to just begin to become friends again. And it sounds funny that we had gone and done all of these things and been across the world, and we were missionaries and we did all this stuff, but we just we weren't really friends a lot of the time. We were kind of just people living in the same house with these kids and trying to get stuff done. But that suffering really brought us onto the same page, and we realized that we were on the same team, and we really needed to be on the same team. So last December, we celebrated 7 years of marriage, and we were so grateful and humbled as we talked about how people often mention the 7-year itch, and how around 7 years people just don't want to be married anymore, and a lot of divorce happens around that time. And we, by God's grace only, have kind of the opposite story, that we got all of our really, really hard stuff out in the first 5 years, and now we've had 2 years of just kind of being on the up and up. And so that's great. The Lord has done a lot. And now we are living in Denton, Texas, and my husband works for the school district and is in school full-time for business, and I am kind of loosely helping with some international student ministry to get people plugged into how to help international students. We have a school near to us that has thousands of international students. And so while we had to stay because of our family's health issues, the Lord has been really gracious to provide opportunities to still reach the nations from our backyard, literally from our backyard. So that is cool. And yeah, I think I'm getting pretty close to tying this up here now that it's a total of 50 minutes long and you've just listened to me talk. And if you're still hanging in, then I commend you for that. But that's pretty much it. We are here just doing life and trying to be grateful for where we're at and for the season that we're in. We have another child, a son, 2 girls and a boy. He is 18 months old now. And if you would have told me 10 years ago that my life would be what it is today, I just absolutely wouldn't have believed it. And I was talking with a friend who came over today and was kind of just puzzled by how everything has gone the way that it has, and how there are so many statistics that I was once a part of as far as addiction and recidivism to prison and just a number of different things. And she said, it's impossible. Your story is just impossible. And that's really what I feel like. I think she hit the nail on the head. My story is impossible, except that God intervened and brought me out of the pit and brought me out of hell on earth while I was still his enemy. I was worshiping other gods in prison and practicing meditation and worshiping myself and in homosexual relationships, and was a self-mutilator and was taking people's psych medication to try to get high. This is where I was when God called me and saved me. And that to me is grace, that I did not have to clean myself up first. I did not have to make myself seem a certain way. I was the lowest of the low and the worst of the worst, and was literally his enemy and was not a lover of God by any means. I was the opposite of that. And that at my rock bottom is where God chose to save me and call me to himself. And so every year when I do my little post about, I've been out of prison for this many years, I always talk about just God's grace to me and God's grace to his children. And it really is just baffling to me because I have not done anything to be where I'm at. I have just tried to be obedient and listen to the Lord and confess my failures day after day after day, and walk with people and be held accountable and try to grow and learn and change. And it really is, all of that is impossible without the Lord. And so all of this story, all of the craziness, he knew, and he was there, and he knew the moment of my deliverance. He knew where I was going to be when I fell to my knees and cried out to him. And what I want to say more than anything about my story is that it has just been completely Jesus. And so if you are struggling with addiction of any kind, hidden sin, if you're broken, if you have mental illness, if you have had a lifetime of trauma, if you are secretly cutting yourself, if you are addicted, anything, the darkest moment that you think that you're at, the light and the hand of God is there and is able to pull you up out of that. And if you have a family member or a loved one or a close friend who is struggling through those things, hear this story and hope in God, because he is able to take something completely broken and make it just this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful life, redeemed life. Not perfect by any means, and not all sunshine and kittens and flowers in a field. There's been a lot of suffering, but he has refined me in the fire, and he's gracious and kind to do that. So I think that's it. I feel like I gave a lot of details, but if I left you with more questions than answers, please get in touch with me somehow. Even comment. I'm going to put this on YouTube, obviously, because that's where you're probably going to be watching it. And my life is really an open book, and I would love to be an encouragement to you and answer any questions that you have. And now, hopefully you know a little bit more about me, and hopefully you hear this and rejoice in what the Lord has done and hope in what he can do in your life and in the lives of the people that you love who may be struggling. So that's it for now. 55 minutes later, I feel like that's probably shorter than I expected it to be. So thanks for hanging around and sticking around, rather. Thanks for sticking around and listening to all of this. And after this, we'll be back to my regularly scheduled songwriting videos in the bathroom, because this is just how I roll. So, all right. Thanks, guys.